Welcome to Part 1 of our Vendor 1099 reporting series. There are 4 parts. Review 1099 form box setup. Part 2, Vendor 1099 list edits. Part 3, Vendor 1099 list additions. And Part 4, print and generate 1099 forms and files. I'll be using quick starts in the tutorials to bypass the activity tree and go directly to the activities. You'll see an arrow letting you know the quick start I'm using and the full path at the top of the workspace. The tutorial will cover where to set the 1099 form box, the cascading logic used in the reporting process, building the vendor 1099 list, and running a vendor 1099 detail report. The 1099 form box is set up in 2 activities, the vendor record and the account component record. Using Quick Start VE name start Yvonne takes us directly to the vendor activity, searches on name starting with Yvonne, and opens the vendor list. In section 6 of Ms. Heimer's vendor record, the 1099 flag is set to yes. She needs to receive a 1099. The 1099 form box is set to 0. The lookup shows us the possible options for this field. This is where the cascading logic comes into play. If set to 0, the box payments are reported in will be determined by the object component used in the payment accounts. If the box is set to a specific number, all payments to the vendor will be reported in that box regardless of the payment accounts. Ms. Heimer is set up as 0 because I pay her for both therapy services and for supplies used with students. I don't want the supply amounts added to her 1099 amounts since the materials stay with the district. When the software sees that the 1099 form box in the vendor record is set to 0, it goes to the account component setup. Using Quick Start CO opens the account component activity. The object component determines which box to use for 1099 reporting. I'll filter my list to only those objects beginning with 5.3 for services or 5.6 for supplies. Well, I have several objects set up with a 1099 box form number. From the list, I can change, add, or remove setup as needed. For instance, object 53215 for psychology services is pointing to box 7, non-employee compensation. Opening the record, I update this box to 6 for medical payments. I can continue working through the list of components and setting them up or correcting as needed. Remember that Ms. Heimer's vendor record pointed to no box. This snapshot of payments made to her in 2017 gives us an example of the cascading logic in practice. One payment was made using object 53214 for therapy services. This amount for $450 will be reported in box 6 of her 1099. Another payment using object 56100 for supply reimbursement will not be reported. Now that I've reviewed my setup, it's time to build the calendar year 1099 tax data. V1 takes us to the vendor 1099 list. Today, I want to search on all vendors with payments received in 2017. Building this list populates the tax table in the database to include the following vendors. Those with the 1099 reporting box set to yes in the vendor record who have payments totaling any amount. Those with the 1099 reporting box set to no, but who have payments that exceed the IRS minimum amounts required for reporting. We'll review this activity in more detail in Part 2. The last step in the review process, we use Quick Start RRP to take us to the Rec Payment Reports activity. Here I run the Vendor 1099 Detail or Rec Pay 16 report. I start by entering my tax year. There are a variety of other user options, and the tooltips provide more information on how to use those options. The link next to the report name opens a web page that provides special considerations additional information, and a sample of the report itself. The question most asked about this report is how to get the full Social Security number to print. The full SSN field allows you to choose full Social Security number or masked Social Security number. It defaults to masked Social Security numbers. I only want to filter on tax year and want the social masked. The data for the report comes from the 1099 tax table populated by building the vendor 1099 list. We see the tax ID information, vendor name, and the amounts being reported in each box of the 1099 form. This provides a quick way to check that vendors and box numbers are set correctly. The left side of the report gives indications of things that might need more review. The key is the bottom. On this report, we have several indicators to take note of. X, meaning the vendor is not set up for 1099 reporting, and, meaning the vendor is also set up as an employee, question mark or pound sign for missing or incorrectly formatted tax IDs. We'll see these same indicators in step 2 when we explore the vendor 1099 list. The last part of the report also includes a section reminding us of our account object code setup that we reviewed earlier. This brings us to the end of part 1. The vendor and account object 1099 form box setup used in this tutorial was for example only. Please refer to IRS guidelines to determine the correct box setup to use in your system. We welcome your comments, feedback, and questions at support@schoolAbility.com. And join us for part 2, Vendor 1099 List Edits, where we explore the Vendor 1099 list and how to make manual adjustments to 1099 payment amounts.